Hello everybody and welcome back to the podcast. I hope you had a great week as always. And today it's another one that I'm very excited to talk about. So today I'm going to tell you a few stories about fishing in Taiwan, and specifically fishing for a snakehead. Okay. In today's podcast then, as always, we have a question to start with and some target vocabulary. So our vocabulary today is related to fishing, and we also have some fish-related idioms. So here's our word list. Fishing vocabulary: rod, reel, spot, bait, lure, hook, cast, reel, line. And here's our fish-related idioms. To be hooked on. A different kettle of fish. A fish out of water. That's our vocabulary list for today, guys. So as you listen to the recording, listen carefully for those words and see if you can guess the meaning from context. As always, we have a question to answer while you're listening. And today's question is, what was my dream fish and did I catch it? Okay, I think I need to introduce a few things. So let's get into the podcast, guys. Let's do it. So, I've been hooked on fishing since my grandpa taught me when I was 5 years old. And it's become one of my biggest passions and a way to spend time in nature with my friends. So when I started traveling full-time as a digital nomad last year, I bought myself a little traveling rod and reel so I could go fishing anywhere in the world. In January this year, 2023, we went to Taiwan to spend 6 weeks with my girlfriend Michelle's family, and one fish was on my mind: the snakehead. Okay, the snakehead is an ancient and scary looking fish. Its head is like a snake, so it has the name snakehead. It has very big black eyes and sharp teeth. Now, I saw the snakehead on TV when I was little, but we don't have them in the UK. So this made me really dream about catching one day. I knew that there are snakehead in Taiwan, but there was a problem. Catching a snakehead was a totally different kettle of fish to the fishing that I knew from England. I had no idea where to find snakehead or how to catch them, and I needed some help. So I started contacting some Taiwanese fishermen on Instagram, and I was introduced to a guy named Alan, and he was a snakehead fishing fan. We chatted online for some time, and I was really happy when one day he invited me to go fishing with him when I arrived in Taipei. A few weeks later, I arrived and I was ready and excited for my first try at catching the fish I dreamed about since I was a little kid. So here is our first try. I met Alan at a spot he knew on the outskirts of Taipei City at 5:30 a.m. Yes, it was very early. We got to know each other a little bit and we waited for the sun to rise, and he showed me our bait and helped me to set up. Our bait was lures, and these are fake fish and shrimps made of plastic with a hook inside. When you cast them out and reel them in, they look like real fish or shrimps in the water, and bigger fish will attack them. As I was chatting to Alan, I could see that he really loved this type of fishing, and I realized that it's becoming really popular in Taiwan, and I think that's great, really good. So we fished for an hour, we cast and reeled, cast and reeled, but we had no fish. I could see loads of fish in the water, but none of them were snakehead. So we moved and we tried some new spots, but the snakehead were just not feeding that day. By 10:30 a.m, the sun was very high and it was too hot. So unfortunately, we said goodbye, but we promised to try again soon. I wasn't disappointed though, because for me, just being outside and fishing is better than doing anything else really, even when you don't catch any fish. And I was making a new friend, so me and Alan were getting on very well, and I could see that he really wanted to help me achieve my dream and catch a snakehead. So we didn't catch one on the first try, but a few weeks later we tried again. Here's the second try. So I arrived at the spot at 6:30 a.m. this time. Yes, I couldn't wake up early enough. It was a cloudy day, which is usually good for fishing, so I was more confident. After an hour, we hadn't caught anything, so I took a break and I climbed to a bridge to eat my breakfast. When I looked down in the water, I saw something. First, I thought it was a rock, but then it moved, and it was a snakehead. So I shouted to Alan, who was fishing below, and told him where to cast. And then I watched as he reeled his lure perfectly in front of the fish. The fish turned, and then bang! It smashed Alan's bait, and his rod bent round. So this was the first snakehead I had ever seen, and it was quite big too. So seeing this amazing fish very close made me even more motivated to catch one myself. Alan caught one, and I saw it, and I really wanted to catch one myself now. So I continued fishing, I continued casting. My skill was getting better, and I was getting more comfortable with the speed I should be reeling, which was much slower than we usually do in the UK. When we first started fishing in Taiwan, I was feeling like a fish out of water. But after a lot of practice, I was feeling less like a fish out of water. I was getting better, but I was still nervous that I wouldn't catch one. And I could see Alan was nervous too. He gave himself a lot of pressure to help me catch a snakehead. About 1 hour later, I suddenly felt my line go very tight. I lifted my rod and I felt a heavy weight pull back. I battled this fish. I still didn't know what it was, but finally I saw this big snake-like head and big black eye come out of the water. Alan shouted, "Nice, nice, nice," suddenly switching to English. Before this, we were speaking in Chinese. I didn't know he could speak English, but he was so excited and he switched to English. And then he helped me lift this fish out of the water, and we did it. I caught the snakehead. We celebrated in a mixture of Chinese and English, and then we took some pictures and we put the fish safely back into the water. So I just want to say, guys, I absolutely love fish, and every time I catch one, we take some pictures and then put it straight back into the water to live for another day. I never eat the fish that I catch. So with Alan's help, I had achieved one of my lifelong fishing dreams. Alan later introduced me to his friend Jordan, and together we all went fishing a few more times. These guys took me to some amazing spots around Taipei and helped me to really fall in love with this city and its nature even more. We still stay in touch today. We chat on Facebook, and I can't wait to go fishing with these guys again when I go back to Taipei next year. Right, I really enjoyed talking about that one, and I hope you enjoyed listening as well. So to the question, I asked you what was my dream fish and did I catch it? Quite easy, I think. The fish was the snakehead, and yes, I caught it, of course. Or this story would be quite boring. Let's look at the vocabulary then. So we're going to start with the fishing vocabulary, and we'll start with the equipment, so the things that you need for fishing. So first of all, I mentioned when I started traveling full-time, I bought myself a travel rod and reel so I could go fishing anywhere in the world. Rod and reel, the two most important pieces of equipment for fishing. The rod is the stick, so you hold the rod in your hand. And the reel is the thing that you turn to make the fish come in. Rod and reel. Then we had bait and lure. So the sentence was, so we waited for the sun to rise. Alan showed me our bait and helped me to set up. The bait was lures, which are fake fish and shrimps made of plastic and rubber. So the bait is the food that you use to catch the fish, the food that the fish will eat. And when we were catching the snakehead, our bait was not real food, it was a lure, a lure. As I mentioned in the recording, a lure is like a plastic or a fake fish, and in the water it looks real, so the big fish attack it. Difficult pronunciation, so it's lure, lure. Really strange one. Your mouth goes in and then out, like lure, lure. But there you go. Next one, hook. Hook. Again, very important piece of equipment. The hook is the sharp thing which catches the fish's mouth. So you put the hook inside the bait. That's the hook. And line, line. So line is on your reel, okay? I mentioned when I caught the fish that I felt my line tighten. So that means my line goes tight, all right, because the fish is pulling back. So the line is the string that goes on your reel. And the other noun was spot, spot. So I met Alan at a spot he knew on the outskirts of Taipei. And then later, Alan and Jordan took me to some incredible spots around Taipei. What is a spot? It's a place where you go fishing. Okay, so a spot is the fishing place. Okay, then we had a couple of verbs, and we can use these verbs alone, or they can be phrasal verbs. So those verbs are cast and reel. Cast and reel. The sentence, we cast and reeled for an hour, but we didn't catch anything. And then also, when Alan caught the first fish, I shouted to Alan and told him where to cast and watched as he reeled his lure past the fish. So cast and reel. Cast is when you use the rod to make the bait and the hook go out. And reel is the opposite. So reel is when you make the bait come back in. If you're watching me, I'm doing the action now, but if you're listening, I think you can get it. So you reel the bait and reel the hook back to you. Yes, reel is the same as the noun. So the reel is the thing that you use to reel. Okay, noun and verb. Cast and reel can be phrasal verbs as well. So we cast the bait out and we reel the bait in. And they're both separable phrasal verbs. So we can put a noun in between the verb and the preposition. So that's the fishing vocabulary, and let's get on to the fish-related idioms. I like these ones. The first one was to be hooked on something. So the sentence was, I've been hooked on fishing since my grandpa taught me when I was 5 years old. To be hooked on something means you're addicted to it. you love it, and you can't stop doing it. We don't have to use it to talk about fishing. So for example, I'm hooked on chocolate. I'm addicted to chocolate. I can't stop eating it. It's not true, but the sentence works. So hooked on, be hooked on, is to be addicted to. You can't stop. Next one, a different kettle of fish. So the sentence from the recording, I knew snakehead lived in Taiwan, but there was a problem. Catching snakehead was a totally different kettle of fish to the fishing I did in England. So a different kettle of fish means something totally different, a completely different situation. We can use this one in many different situations, really. Another example, learning Chinese is a totally different kettle of fish to learning English because it has a different alphabet, right? No ABC. So a different kettle of fish, something totally different. So the final fish-related idiom, another really good one, is a fish out of water. And I used this one in the recording when I talked about how after Alan caught the first snakehead, my skill was getting better. You know, I practiced more and more, and I was feeling less like a fish out of water with this style of fishing. So that means I was feeling less uncomfortable, less unfamiliar with this style of fishing. When you're a fish out of water, you're in a totally unfamiliar and uncomfortable situation where you don't know what you're doing, okay? So I'm an English teacher, right? If you put me in a class and ask me to teach Italian, I'll be a fish out of water. I'll be totally unfamiliar and uncomfortable with that situation. I'll have no idea what to do. So that's it for today, guys. Some nice fishing related vocabulary and fish related idioms as well. Remember, those fish related idioms can be used in any situation, not just to talk about fishing. Hope you enjoyed it today. Have a great week and see you next time.